Welcome to the City of Glendale's 23rd Annual Armenian Genocide commemorative event here at the iconic Alex Theater. I'm Lena Abovian, and thank you for allowing me to join you as your host today. As a Glendale resident, a lifelong Glendale resident, community volunteer for the Glendale Police Foundation, and also someone who is raising her own family here, it truly is an honor to be with all of you. Today's theme for the event is 1.5 million plus, and it pays tribute to the enduring strength survivors while honoring the memory of the countless victims of the 1915 genocide. Thank you for honoring the rich history and the legacy of the Armenian people and the diaspora. As we hear from our esteemed panel of speakers tonight, I invite you to remember that these are the voices, music, traditions, passed down through the generations and shared history that ties the Armenian American community together. At this time, I would like to acknowledge the dignitaries who are in attendance this evening. Please bear with me, it is a very long list. Glendale City Mayor Ellen Asaterian, and it is worth noting that she is our very first Armenian American mayor, female mayor for the City of Glendale. Truly an honor. Council members for the Glendale City Council, Artie Kasakian, Dan Brotman, who is also co-chair of the organizing committee for today's event, Vartan Karapetyan, and Paula Devine, who this week concluded her service on the council. California State Assembly members Laura Friedman and Wendy Carrillo, His Eminence Archbishop Hovnan Derderian of the Western Diocese Church, Archpriest Reverend Father Artak Demircan of the Western Prelacy, His Excellency Bishop Mikhail Muradian of the Armenian Catholic Eparchy of Our Lady of Natick in the United States and Canada, Garo Palyan, the former member of the Turkish Parliament and founding member of the People's Democratic Party, Dr. Karen Israelian, Consul General of the Republic of Armenia in Los Angeles, Valery Mkrtumyan, former Consul General of the Republic of Armenia in Los Angeles, City Manager Rubik Gulanian, and several members of his executive team, City Clerk Dr. Suzy Abajian, former Glendale Mayors Frank Quintero and Vrej Agajanian, Burbank Mayor Nick Schultz and Vice Mayor Nikki Perez, and several members of the Burbank City Council, Glendale Unified School District Board of Trustees, Glendale Community College Board of Trustees, City of Glendale Board and Commission members. And last but not least, this event's committee members and city staff who are noted in the program and who have spent countless hours making sure today's event is successful. And if I missed anyone, my apologies. As you just heard, we are so humbled by the presence of our esteemed individuals who have gathered here tonight. We extend our warmest welcome to each of you. At this time, I would like to welcome to the stage for the Armenian Haidmid prayer, His Eminence Archbishop Hovnan Derderian of the Western Diocese Church, Archpriest Reverend Father Artak Demirjan of the Western Prelacy, and His Excellency Bishop Mikhail Muradian of the Armenian Catholic Eparchy of Our Lady Nadek in the United States and Canada.
Please stand for the prayer together. Օրնյալ Տեր մեր Հիսուս Քրիստոս ամեն հայր մեր, որ երգինս ես, Սուրբ Եղիցի անուն քո, եկես սե արքայություն քո, Եղիցին գամ քո, որպես երգինս եւ երգրի, զհաց մեր անաբազոր, դուր մեզ այսօր, եւ թող մեզ զբարդիս մեր, որպես եւ մեկ թողոնք մեր օծ վարդաբանած, եւ մի դանիրս մեզի փորձություն, այլ պրգիազ մեզի չարե, Zikoy arkaytun yev zorutun yev park havidianas. Amen. On behalf of the clergy, I would like to thank the city responsibles for organizing this commemoration of the Armenian Genocide. May God bless their souls and give us the strength to continue the blessed way they took before us. May their memory be eternal. Thank you all.
Thank you to our religious leaders for being here tonight and also leading us in the Armenian Holy Prayer. At this time, I would like to welcome to the stage Mayor Elena Satarian, who also served as co-chair of the organizing committee who put today's program together.
Welcome. Prior to giving my remarks, I also want to acknowledge the presence of our dear colleague, Ara Najarian, who's also a council member, and who is actually the longest serving council member in the City of Glendale. Bari Yereko. Tonight, as we gather for our 23rd annual Armenian Genocide commemorative event, I'm deeply grateful for the opportunity to stand with all of you. April is no longer just the commemoration of the Armenian Genocide of 1915, but the ongoing ethnic cleansing of Armenians, and we must say it, our US federal government is complicit. As we gather here today in honor and to remember the 1.5 million plus lives lost, 150,000 Armenians of Artsakh who were displaced by the ethnic cleansing perpetrated by Azerbaijan with the full support of Turkey are attempting to rebuild their lives. And every morning, and this morning was no different, Armenians around the world wake up to news of loss of ancestral lands and precious lives. In this solemn moment, we must acknowledge that we are, in this moment, living in the darkest chapter of our history, which started over 109 years ago, but continues to date. The resilience of the Armenian people in the face of suffering and adversity is a testament to the enduring strength of Armenians and the Armenian spirit. As custodians of our heritage, it falls upon every single one of us to safeguard the Armenian culture, heritage, language, land, and legacy for generations yet to come. Just this week, I'm proud to share that our Glendale City Council proclaimed yet again April 2024 as Armenian Genocide Commemoration and Armenian Heritage Month. This declaration underscores the significance of acknowledging Armenian civilization, the atrocities inflicted upon Armenians by Turkey and Azerbaijan, and the resilience of our Armenian people worldwide. It also calls upon our U.S. leaders to provide humanitarian aid, support Armenian rights, help release hostages and POWs, and pursue justice and reconciliation only with admittance of facts by Turkey and Azerbaijan, and only with the agreement of reparations to the Armenian nation. As our City Council prepares to consider a formal resolution on April 30th, in alignment with these principles, it's crucial to recognize the special bond between our sister cities, City of Glendale and Kapan, City of Glendale and Gyumri in Armenia, who are at risk today, and Glendale and Martuni, nestled in Artsakh. And we are forever going to say Artsakh. We cannot merely commemorate the past without addressing the present. The displacement of Armenians and ongoing atrocities demand our attention. Statements of solidarity are left to yesterday. What the Armenian community, Armenia, and Artsakh need is action. So I must use this opportunity to call on all of our businesses, small and large, all of our nonprofit organizations, all of our religious institutions, all of our local, regional, state, and federal officials and agencies to stand with the Armenian community, not in mere words, but through action. This isn't just the fight for survival left to be handled by the Armenian community. It requires others to stand with us. So I ask you to please join me in writing to your state and congressional representatives and the Biden administration to demand justice for the Armenian people. In these moments, the City of Glendale serves as an example, amplifying the voices of our collective history and honoring the resilience of our people as the largest concentration of Armenians outside of Armenia and Artsakh. We also pay tribute to our ancestors and celebrate the cultural contributions of Armenian Americans who enrich the fabric of our city. Tonight, as we gather, we not only commemorate and call on you to take action, but we also celebrate the legacy of pillars within our community. These individuals embody the spirit of service and dedication, leaving an incredible mark not only on the Armenian American diaspora, but also on the broader communities that they touched. Their commitment to education, philanthropy, medicine has lit the path of progress and compassion for all. Though they may no longer be with us, their legacy remains a vibrant force, inspiring and empowering all of us to follow in their footsteps. Among these are Dr. Vartkes Najarian, who is the father of our colleague Ara Najarian, Professor Richard Hovanesyan, and most recently, Ralph Sam Tufenkian. Before I close, I would like to thank our performers, speakers, our MC, Elina Abovian, and finally, the committee of our community volunteers and our incredible staff that came together and helped us plan this event. I've been in these meetings and know the amount of time, resources, and planning that went into this, so thank you so much for your efforts, and thank you to my co-chair of the committee, Councilmember Dan Brockman. I'd also like to personally thank Ara Shanulyan and today's presenting sponsor, Kaiser Permanente. Thank you. Շնորհակալություն.
Thank you, Mayor Ellen Asatryan. thank you for your words and for joining us tonight. Unity and continuing to fight for Armenians around the world. We thank you for all of your efforts. Next, let us please welcome to the stage the Haikyan Chamber Choir in the premiere of Ani Requiem, composed by Khachatur Avetisyan and poet Ludwig Durian in 1988. Ani Requiem, led by artistic director Gayane Bagdasaryan and soloist Gayane Sahakyan, tells the story of Ani, Armenia's former capital city. What an incredibly moving performance. Thank you again to the Haikon Chamber Choir. Now let us please turn our attention to visual storytelling as we watch a video presentation put together by Naidi Bendari and the talented team at Glendale TV.
A 100 years ago, the young Turk government of the Ottoman Empire decided to deport and eventually massacre somewhere between 600,000 and 1 million plus Armenians. I'm Ron Suni. I'm a professor at the University of Michigan. I'm a historian, an author, and I'm Armenian. By the end of World War I, 90% of the Armenians of the Ottoman Empire are gone, either massacred, deported, or fled. They lost their own historic homeland, they lost a whole civilization, let alone the physical destruction of ordinary people. This is considered the first major genocide of the 20th century. The Turkish government officially denies that this was a genocide. They have argued in different ways. It didn't happen, it was a civil war, the Armenians were rebels, all we wanted to do was deport them, we didn't massacre them. They refused to use the word genocide. My grandfather decided there's no future for Armenians here, we're leaving. His family, all of those who stayed in Yozgat, were killed in 1915.
Well, this region of Artsakh has always been one of the integral regions of the Armenian homeland throughout our history. Thousands of years of history and for thousands of years, this region has been Armenian. In 1920, when both Azerbaijan and Armenia became Soviet republics, at that time they wanted to draw new borders. For very tactical political reasons, Stalin put a lot of pressure on the authorities of the Transcaucasian republics to have both Artsakh and Nakhichevan included in Azerbaijan rather than in Armenia, despite the fact that at that time 97% of the population was Armenian. 97%.
Շատ ուրախ էր, որ մասնակցեցավ այդ կռիվներուն։ Զենք չուներ եւ այնտեղ թղթագիտի մը գնկերանար, ամեն ինչ ցկեց եւ վազեց կռիվին։ Իր կորձը շատ ծանրացած էր։ Գսկայի, գտեսնեի, բայց կզարմանայի, որ իր մեջ ոչ մեկ ընկրկում կար։ Միշտ այսինքն երբեք չսա, որ պիտի ցկեմ ամեն ինչ եւ պիտի կամ չնայած շատ դեպքեր եղան, առիթներ եղան, որ ինքը զզվեցավ։ Իսկապես քանելիք բաներ եղած էին իրեն համար։ Բայց միևնույն է ինքը շարունակել եւ ինչպես միշտ կսեր եւ միշտ փորձած է իր կյանքի մեջ, չեր սիրեր կորզմը գես ցկել։ Անպայման պետք է կորձմը ավարտել։ Եթե սկսած է, պետք է մինչև վերջ հասցնել։ Իր նպատակները այնքան հերուգերտային, միշտ կսեր, որ Արցախեն ետք, Նախիջևանեն ետք, Ճավախք եւ անպայման Արևմտա Հայաստան, բռնակրաված հողեր, անպայման։ Կհավատար, որ եթե շատ ուզենք, կրնանք։
Գուզեմ, որ ամեն մարդ հասկանա, թե ինչքան կարևոր է այս պատերազմը մեր ժողովրդի համար,
մեր բապմության համար, մեր աբակայի համար։ Մեծ բապմական առիթ է եւ գնենք որ մեր թշնամին մեզ մի շարավլի ուժեղ է, բայց նորեն մենք առայժմ կհաղթենք որ։
The fear of Azerbaijan retaking control of Nagorno-Karabakh has also drawn in the Armenian diaspora. Dr. Armen Hakobjanian is a surgeon who flew from Los Angeles 2 days earlier. What are the extent of the injuries you're seeing as a result of Azerbaijani attacks here in the hospital?
Absolutely massive. These are not a simple injury that these kids are suffering. Those are 20, 25-year-old kids that are going to defend their own home. They're defending their own country, and they're being blown to pieces by 21st century mighty weapons.
What actually pushed? Okay, all right.
We have to gain justice. And one of the tasks is not to allow this to happen again. Because we all know that the goal is against us, is extermination of the Armenian nation. And we should not sit and wait until Artsakh becomes part of our history.
Խաղաղություն բիլա միայն մեր հաղթանակով։ Անկարելի է խաղաղություն տեսնել առանց մեր հաղթանակի։
While Israel continues its gruesome military operation in Gaza, it is quietly waging another war inside the ancient stone walls of Jerusalem's Old City. The target of this assault is not some band of insurgents, but Jerusalem's smallest religious minority, Armenian Christians.
The Armenian presence in Jerusalem has existed for more than a millennia, and it's been bought with blood, sweat, and a lot of sacrifices. So to have it all whisked away is a tragedy for us.
The Armenian quarter of Jerusalem is home to a 1,600-year-old Christian community. Stones, rock walls, and crosses line their narrow streets.
So since the 4th century, there have been a lot of pilgrims who came here, and over the years, over the millennia, they developed what is now known as the Armenian Quarter of Jerusalem and the Armenian Patriarchate of Jerusalem.
Before October 7th, a corrupt Armenian church leader secretly signed over a giant swath of the priceless Armenian Quarter to Zana Capital, a mysterious real estate firm registered in Dubai. Before the deal was finalized, the Armenian community discovered that Zana Capital's owner is an Israeli Jewish businessman with countless links to Israeli settler organizations, in addition to Israeli organizations known for carrying out massive land grabs against non-Jews on behalf of Jewish settler development companies. The community canceled the deal, but after October 7th, the company returned, attempting to destroy the Armenian Quarter and take the land by force. On November 5th, Zana Capital and Jewish settlers from the West Bank illegally raided the Armenian Quarter with bulldozers, attack dogs, and automatic weapons, seeking to dislodge the original and legal Armenian occupants.
We gathered up around here and literally stood in front of the bulldozers. My family's presence alone predates the state of Israel. So to use the "we were here before" argument, it doesn't really stick with Armenians over here.
Zana Capital is dead set on claiming this area because of its strategic significance in furthering the Judaization of Jerusalem.
And we've been guarding our presence and heritage over here 24/7, taking shifts, taking time away from our families, our works, our daily lives, and at this point, our sanity.
On April 3rd, representatives of Zana Capital, along with Hilltop Youth, a group of hardline extremist Jewish settlers illegally residing in the West Bank, gathered at the Armenian Quarter's Cow's Garden and began destroying the security outposts that the Armenian community set up to protect themselves and their property. They also assaulted clergy members for attempting to stop the illegal destruction and evictions. As usual, Zana Capital and the settlers were accompanied and assisted by heavily armed Israeli police who carried out arrests of Armenian clergy members.
We're dealing with a private company, with the state of Israel, and it's an uphill battle, but everyone over here, their resolve is unmatched, basically. We will stay here to the very end. This is our home, this is our heritage, this is our livelihood, so we will stay here till the very end, no matter the consequences.
That poignant video presentation, as I'm sure you will agree, was incredible, and it illuminated our journey of remembrance and resilience. Up next, I would like to please welcome to the stage Karnik Kerkonyan, the founding member of the Committee of the Protection of Fundamental Rights of the People of Artsakh. He is an accomplished international attorney who is known for defending the Armenian Quarter of Jerusalem and representing Armenia in legal matters internationally. Mr. Karnik Kerkonyan.
Thank you for the kind introduction. Today, I'm going to say some things that are going to be hard to hear, harder still to process, and at times almost impossible to believe. But I'm going to promise you that everything we will discuss is true. A harsh and unsettling truth that is profoundly painful and deeply disturbing. Catastrophe. We are living right now in a national catastrophe of epic scale. We're not gathered here today after a national catastrophe. We're gathered here today amidst a national catastrophe. When historians pen this chapter, they will do so with a straight line from the Hamidian massacres to 1915 to the massacres in Shushi, the pogroms of Sumgait, Baku, Kirovabad, and to the Artsakh genocide, and to the travesties of today. Actually, the travesties that await us just in the days ahead, because it's not over. Our children and their children's children will inherit the compounded weight of these continuing catastrophes. These years will be remembered as years of moral collapse, of utter depravity, a catastrophic failure of our national consciousness at its core. It will be a testament to the shocking depths to which the human soul can sink when it is unmoored from the anchors of a unifying national identity, of a unifying national dignity, of a unifying national consciousness. A nation reduced to a handheld cutout board. This is the moment of the Armenian civilization's complete loss of a guiding national compass. POWs silently crying for help while we're forced to negotiate trade routes. Elementary schools within striking distance of military posts, while we concede new heights to Azerbaijan. Calls by Aliyev to change our constitution, to remove Ararat from our coat of arms, while he lays claim to Yerevan itself. There is no sanctity in this historical moment. Nothing is immune from desecration. Not our history, not our symbols, not our churches, not our children, not our cemeteries, not even the memory of the Armenian Genocide. All will be questioned, every story rewritten, every hero maligned. And some will laugh at us. They will laugh at us because we ourselves allowed our nation to come to the brink, to come to this ledge, and because we ourselves helped push our own people off that ledge. They will ridicule us because we, by our own hands and by our own mouths, pushed our own people off the ledge and into the darkness below. Remember, there are 5,000 mothers that are forever broken. An infant daughter obliterated by drone fire, shrapnel embedded into a son's head, children with no fathers, brothers with no legs, body bags stacked in hallways in Goris, blood-soaked hospital walls in Stepanakert, parents of missing sons wailing in Republic Square. An entire Armenian civilization unearthed, ripped from its soil and left dangling naked from the roots. How did we become this nation? How did we become that nation whose sons invented a vaccine to fight COVID but could not fly a single tablet of heart medication 20 miles to Artsakh? Think about it. How could the Armenians be that nation of billionaires and CEOs who drive Bentleys and fly in private jets, but could not deliver a single piece of bread 20 miles to Artsakh? How did Armenians become that nation of social media moguls and influencers? Kim Kardashian and the guy who founded Reddit. Yet a nation who could not influence anybody from CNN to Fox News to tell the story of a more than 9-month blockade of 30,000 Armenian children screaming from shelling and starvation. Think about it. How did we become that nation? Children and churches, languages and livelihoods, families and freedoms, all degraded, all desecrated, all demeaned, all destroyed. One nation, 2 genocides, 1 century. We're living a national catastrophe of epic proportions, one that will haunt our collective memory and torture our national psyche. And how we got here is not just about might makes right. Blaming everything on power politics is like attributing a heart attack simply to genetics. It's not how it works. The international world order is a bit more complex than that. You see, one of the reasons why we are standing at the brink is because of a very special tool that states use to get what they want. Narratives. Special stories that states tell about themselves and stories they tell about others. Stories that serve their own interests. You see, we're standing at the edge because our nation fell victim to others' narratives. Let me show you how our story is told by others. September 14th, 2023. At a congressional hearing in Washington, D.C., Assistant Secretary of State Yuri Kim testified, and I'm quoting, "The United States will not countenance any action or effort to ethnically cleanse or commit other atrocities against the Armenian population of Nagorno-Karabakh." 5 days later, Azerbaijan ethnically cleansed the entire Armenian population of Nagorno-Karabakh. In almost laughable lockstep, the New York Times, who for 286 days refused to publish anything material on the Artsakh blockade, was suddenly awakened. "Nobody saw it coming," was the headline. What? Nobody saw it coming? Nobody saw the utter depravity that led up to this? Perhaps the New York Times missed the official government-stamped Azerbaijan issue depicting an exterminator in a hazmat suit cleansing Nagorno-Karabakh of Armenians. Or perhaps Ambassador Kim missed the military trophy park in Baku, proudly showcasing the helmets of fallen Armenian soldiers, gruesome, bloody mannequins, for kids at the park, Azerbaijani kids to look at and laugh. In fact, at the time of her congressional testimony, Azerbaijan had already circulated videos of Armenian captives crawling on their hands and knees while being prodded like animals by Azerbaijani soldiers with metal pipes. Armenian children had already been beheaded by Azerbaijani drone fire. Armenian women were already being marketed for rape on Azerbaijani social media channels. Aliyev had already referred to us, to many of us here, as dogs. Azerbaijani politicians were calling Armenians cancers, tumors, and rats. Nobody saw it coming? Nobody thought that maybe Azerbaijan was preparing to exterminate the Artsakh Armenians like rats, chase them out like dogs, cut them out like cancers. What did they think was going to happen as the Azerbaijani army completely encircled Artsakh, starved actual human beings to death and submission, cut off cities, families, and villages, shot farmers, cut gas, electricity, denied them water for 286 days? But don't worry. Amidst this complete blockade of Artsakh, in fact, just over 50 days after it started, the Armenian government dispatched rescue workers to Turkey. We sent aid workers to Turkey to rescue people from beneath the rubble of an earthquake. The image of Armenian rescue workers triumphantly crossing the closed border between Armenia and Turkey should be etched into your minds. Humanitarianism is good, yes. But there was another story that we were trying to tell at the same time, weren't we? You see, the rescue mission to Turkey stands in stark contrast to the 286 days where we did not cross the Hakkari Bridge. Not a truck, not a plane, not a car, not a drone, nothing. We provided aid to screaming children in Aintab, while our own children cried out for help in Askeran. We offered blankets to mothers in Marash, while our own grandmothers suffered without heat and gas in Marduni. After all, our Artsakh people weren't our responsibility anymore, right? We had outsourced the security of our own people. We outsourced the physical protection of our own people. We gave our children to the neighbor down the road. It was their responsibility to protect now, right? We did not cross that bridge. We did not dare to cross that bridge. We outsourced it. But that's not all we outsourced. Not at all. We outsourced something much bigger than that during the last 3 years. We outsourced our story, our national narrative. By outsourcing the narrative of our people, the story of our own national struggle for existence, we outsourced the future of the Artsakh Armenians, indeed, the future of the entire nation. In surrendering that pen of our story, we surrendered to the tales crafted by others, tales we knew, or should have known, to be fabrications. We embraced these falsehoods. We even attempted to weave them into the fabric of our collective consciousness. And in doing so, we didn't merely mislead. We betrayed ourselves, perpetrating some form of self-deception that has jeopardized and continues to jeopardize right now our national consciousness, our truth. And this is what I want to talk to you about today. The narratives that have been crafted and served to us, narratives that we embraced wholesale, narratives that we ourselves forcefully fed to our own people, stories that we knew deep down defied logic, yet we repeated them until they eroded our collective consciousness. And intertwined in these narratives were seductive distortions, masquerading as principles of international law. That's how I noticed them. Fairy tales that have produced devastating consequences for our nation. So, what are those false narratives that have brought us to the brink? We'll start with the integration story. You remember this one? That the Artsakh Armenians should integrate and coexist with Azerbaijan. The story went like this. The Artsakh Armenians would be given certain rights and protections to live peacefully within Azerbaijan, and thus Azerbaijan's territorial integrity would be respected and Armenians would live safely and with dignity in their homeland. You may remember the language. The international community told Yerevan that if it would just lower the bar on Artsakh and speak about the Artsakh Armenians from a perspective of minority rights, not as a people with the right to self-determination, but as a minority, a minority within Azerbaijan, then by some geopolitical magic, the seas would part, peace would reign, and the global world order would find a beautiful equilibrium in which all peoples of the region would flourish. This was a false narrative. It was a narrative developed and sold by policymakers in Washington and in Brussels as a settlement, a dignified settlement to the Nagorno-Karabakh crisis. They introduced this narrative in Armenia right at the end of the 2020 war. And timing is important. Think about that. Washington and Brussels were advocating to place Armenians under the control and authority of Azerbaijan right at the time when Genocide Watch had raised the genocide threat level facing Artsakh Armenians to levels 9 and 10, when the Lemkin Institute for Genocide Prevention had warned that Azerbaijan's actions, and I'm going to quote again here, are part of a larger genocidal pattern demonstrating Azerbaijan's Armenophobia and genocidal intent aimed at the eradication of Armenia, Artsakh, and the Armenians. In that documented reality, the solution being pandered by sophisticated parties in Washington and Brussels was to actually place the Artsakh Armenians within Azerbaijan. That was a workable solution for the fate of actual human beings? Integration when 100,000 Armenians remained under total blockade by Azerbaijan for more than 9 months? Integration when Azerbaijan was seeking to completely isolate, encircle, and starve actual human beings? The dignified solution was to push Artsakh Armenians into the authority and control of the regime intent on destroying them? Really? That we even allowed this narrative is disgusting. You see, at that moment, Azerbaijan had already cleansed Armenians from every single city that had fallen under its authority and control. It was busy cleansing the land itself of any evidence of Armenians, destroying Armenian churches, unearthing entire Armenian cemeteries, scraping away ancient Armenian inscriptions, and claiming Armenian churches were actually Albanian churches. Reports even indicate that Azerbaijan was building concentration camps to house these integrated Armenians. Yet for 3 years, the global powers and their paid mouthpieces in Armenia pushed the empty narrative of integrating Artsakh Armenians into Azerbaijan, an authoritarian dictatorship openly espousing the hatred, dehumanization, and destruction of Armenians. They spun fairy tales of rights and security while Azerbaijan shot hog-tied Armenian POWs. They held conferences in Armenia where they spoke of coexistence, while Azerbaijan gouged the eyes out of an Armenian captive, an Armenian mother, and shoved her fingers into her mouth, chopped off. The utter ridiculousness of this integration campaign should have been obvious from the start. But named diplomats and experts, some who surfaced in Armenia specifically to push this narrative, insisted it was possible, and even tried to force-feed integration and coexistence into the mouths of the Artsakh Armenians. And this coexistence and integration campaign was well coordinated with Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan even had, and I'm not joking, a reintegration app on its government website. So you can apply to reintegrate yourself into Azerbaijan's dictatorship. The tab for that app on the website was located right next to the Western Azerbaijan tab. Western Azerbaijan, of course, is what Aliyev calls Armenia. Now, What demented legal framework would allow or even condone pushing a targeted population into the military and political control of a perpetrator seeking to exterminate them? That would be absurd as a legal principle. And that's because it's not a legal principle. The law is clear. In the face of genocide, it is self-determination, not integration, that is required. Human mutilation, beheadings, rape, indignities, dehumanization, starvation, isolation, concentration camps, and the destruction of cultural and religious heritage, those aren't the hallmarks of an integration plan. They're the hallmarks of a different kind of plan altogether. Aliyev's integration agenda was actually Aliyev's genocide agenda. We knew this. We knew Azerbaijan was seeking to destroy the Artsakh Armenians. We knew this down to the details. We had cases in the European Court of Human Rights and the International Court of Justice presenting this evidence to the courts. Yet, in Armenia, the narrative of integration and coexistence spread unchecked. This dangerous fiction found its way into our parliament. It infiltrated our newspapers, and it permeated our national conversation. It was a false narrative, a fairy tale engineered by Washington and Brussels to convince Armenians of what they knew was false, that Artsakh Armenians could live in security and safety in Azerbaijan. Why? Because it advanced the interests of the West with Baku. It definitely didn't advance the interests of the Artsakh Armenians being fed to their slaughter. But we should have known that, right? I mean, it made no sense. But they just kept saying it. Repetition is a powerful tool. And to be clear, what came afterward only confirms the falsity of the narrative. There was never a plan for integration or coexistence. Aliyev demolished the very parliament building from which the Artsakh Armenians operated an actual democracy for 27 years, ripped steeples off of our churches, ransacked people's homes, razed our heritage to the ground. Then, he even posted a video of himself burning away, cleansing even the smell of Armenians from Stepanakert. Integration and coexistence was a false narrative. It was a lie fed to us. A lie they knew was false, and a lie we certainly should have known was false. But that wasn't the only false narrative. Here's a story that we let Azerbaijan tell. Territorial integrity. That territorial integrity matters and not self-determination. This was the story Azerbaijan told as to why the world should support its military conquest of Artsakh, its violent military takeover of Artsakh, its destruction and forced displacement of the Artsakh people. Territorial integrity. Now, after 2020, we didn't counter with the story of self-determination. We let them tell their story. Actually, it's worse than that. We told our diplomats not to even speak about self-determination. In fact, not even to use the word Artsakh. Remember, we were parroting the minority rights story. That story about how Armenian people should just live integrated with the Azerbaijanis. But you see, Azerbaijan's territorial integrity story was a false narrative too. Territorial integrity is not a license to destroy people, whether you think they're your citizens or not. A state's territorial integrity is not a license to commit genocide and forcefully displace a people from their homeland, even if you believe that the homeland is inside what you believe are your borders. Think about the absurdity of the story Azerbaijan was telling. This is my land, these are my people, and I can do with them as I wish within my borders. That's not true as a matter of international law. It hasn't been true for nearly a century. That's the equivalent of saying that this is my house, these are my property lines, and as long as I murder and rape the people in my house, well, it's my house. This is Azerbaijan's territorial integrity argument in a nutshell. We didn't expose the absurdity of that argument. We let them tell the story in a vacuum. It was the only story being told. Worse, we helped them tell it by staying silent on the issue of self-determination, just as our friends in Washington and Brussels told us to do. The truth is that territorial integrity is not some inviolable sacred right. Under international law, it's not even supreme to the right of self-determination. It's not even on par with the right of self-determination. It's an operational rule. It's part of the rules of the road of the international community, a UN Charter rule. I'll explain. Take, for example, the speed limit. 35 miles per hour. That's the rule. The rule should be followed. It should be followed by everybody. Yes, it should be followed during the day, at night, always. Except that's not true, is it? When you're rushing a dying relative to the hospital, the speed limit doesn't matter anymore, does it? When you're driving a child away from a school shooting incident, the speed limit doesn't matter, does it? Cars pull over for the ambulance. Police even escort you as you speed through streets and school zones. All of a sudden, it's not the speed limit that matters anymore, but the life you are trying to save. The speed limit's the rule until there's a life-threatening emergency, a more important life-threatening purpose. Then the speed limit is not only meaningless, it's purposely and completely cast aside to save human life. Territorial integrity is the speed limit under international law, one of the rules of the road. But when a state is intentionally seeking to destroy human beings, a 4,000-year-old civilization from its roots after launching a 44-day war, murdering thousands, blockading them for 10 months, starving them and isolating them, and then attacking them again with shells and ground forces, 100,000 people are in complete siege and risk of death and displacement at the barrel of a fascist military intent on committing war crimes and atrocities. Well, that's an emergency. That's when the speed limit doesn't matter anymore. That's when cars pull over for the ambulance. That's when you get to speed 100 miles an hour in a school zone. When the intent to commit genocide, hell, when acts of genocide are actually underway, it is self-determination that is required, not the speed limit. But we didn't tell that story. We let Azerbaijan tell its story in a vacuum. We let Azerbaijan tell this story to the world while we reveled about the amazing Armenian IT sector. And guess what? We have what we have. We have an amazing Armenian IT sector, but we don't have Artsakh. Our nation stands at the moment Monty Melkonyan, who you saw in the video, warned us about 30 years ago. There is little room left for lies. Now more than ever, it's imperative that we remain vigilant against narratives that conflict with our understanding of the truth. Because this last false narrative we will discuss may be the one, if we're not careful, that turns that final page. That's the narrative of appeasement. That deceptive lure that unilateral concessions will bring peace is being served to our people right now. It's a narrative woven by threads of fear, yet it binds us to a cycle of perpetual aggression and suffering. We must cede Artsakh and we will have peace. We must cede the heights near Gapan and we will have peace. We must cede the posts in Shurnukh and we will have peace. We must cede the mountains surrounding Nerkinhand and we will have peace. We must concede a road in Sunik and we will have peace. We must concede and we will have peace. But we know the truth. These concessions have not brought peace. They will not bring peace. Appeasement is not a road to peace. It has never been. Winston Churchill said it best when facing the expansionism of Hitler. He said, and I'm quoting, "An appeaser is one who feeds a crocodile, hoping It will eat him last. Today, we found ourselves at the bank of the bloody river once more, this time in Tavush, feeding the crocodile yet again, conceding more villages as Azerbaijan's ambitions grow even clearer and more ominous. Aliyev's regime, with its eyes firmly set on the Armenian homeland, seeks nothing less than a complete erasure of Armenian nationhood. He has actually said it himself. This is not about territorial disputes, maps, or demarcation and delimitation. Don't fool yourselves. It's about the incremental occupation and colonization of the Armenian homeland. Every inch of land ceded has been transformed into a foothold for further aggression by Azerbaijan. Appeasement failed to stop Hitler. Appeasement failed to stop Imperial Japan. Appeasement failed to stop the Hutus in Rwanda. Appeasement has failed to stop Aliyev. The time of equivocation is over. Enough is enough. We must cease to fuel the ambitions of a regime bent on the systematic destruction of our people. Every unilateral concession only empowers and emboldens the genocidal regime. The crocodile must be starved, not fed, meal after meal. The narrative of unilateral concessions is a false narrative. The argument that concessions will bring peace is historically untrue. It's factually untrue. It's empirically untrue. So where do we go from here? I think it's pretty clear. We tell our story ourselves without concession, without apology, and with a stubborn insistence on the truth. That's what resilience is. Resilience transcends mere survival. It embodies a profound understanding of the formidable challenges that loom ahead. It is the conscious decision to confront these challenges head on, fortified by an unwavering knowledge of the truth. True resilience is manifested in an unshakable commitment to one's nation, to the enduring narratives that define us, and to the principles that anchor our existence. It requires a steadfast adherence to these principles, coupled with an unshakable tenacity. In the face of relentless adversity, resilience is not merely about enduring. It's about holding fast to our core, defending our identity and our heritage and our consciousness with vigor, and never wavering in our resolve. We have this resilience as a nation. We saw it in Artsakh for 4,000 years and 286 days of blockade. You remember that resilience. More than 75,000 Armenians from Stepanakert alone amassing in Republic Square, unfurling the Artsakh flag amidst a paralyzing blockade. Malnourished but magnificent, blockaded but bold, surrounded but cemented. You remember that feeling. It made you proud. It made you feel dignified. That's because you have lived among the greatest of the Armenian people. And don't ever forget that. I have seen that resilience in the young boys that have protected the Armenian quarter of Jerusalem for over 170 days now, facing attacks by Jewish settlers with automatic weapons and attack dogs. Our boys have refused to move an inch. And remember, the settlers are armed. We are not. These boys know their place in history. We have taken back control of the Armenian land by sheer will, by sheer commitment, by sheer persistence. We will always be a threatened people. All great people will be a threatened people. Because all great people have history, have heritage, have identity, have conviction, because all great people have a story. And nobody is allowed to take our story from us. Nobody is allowed to speak our story instead of us. And nobody ever is allowed to make us stop speaking our truth. This is not 1915. We're not 12-year-old orphans in the desert. We're leaders and lawyers. We're creators and the creative. We are the powerful and the popular. Hell, we're even the rich and the respected, the famous and the philanthropists. We must stand resilient. We can stand resilient. We must demand what we know is the truth. We must tell the story that we know is true. Aliyev committed genocide against the Artsakh Armenians. Aliyev seeks to destroy the Armenian people, and Turkey helped him do it and is helping him do it right now. In the face of that, we must not bow our heads like subjects, kneel like servants. We must demand our truth. We demand everything to which we are entitled, everything. We must demand it fully and shamelessly. My colleague, Garo Ghazarian, who is here tonight, said something that has stayed with me. He said, if you don't take advantage of the rights put before you, then any future complaint you make about injustice or unfairness is forever meaningless, ridiculous, and pitiful. He's right. We must demand the rights put before us, no matter how hard the path to those rights are or may be at the present. You know, the world can change on a dime. We've seen this. We cannot have history happen to us again. We need to raise our voice to be part of that history, not hide like a slave. The Artsakh Armenians have the right to return to their indigenous homeland. That's the truth. And given Aliyev's genocidal intent, the Artsakh Armenians are entitled to return to their homeland under international protection. In fact, their right to return must be collective, it must be under international protection, and it must respect the fundamental rights of the Artsakh Armenians, including their right to self-determination. The Palestinians have called for that right for 75 years. The Jews founded Israel on a right of return. We must demand that Azerbaijan withdraws from Nagorno-Karabakh. We must demand that it be forced to end its military occupation. We must demand that it be forced to accept an international peacekeeping mission to guarantee that which it cannot ever guarantee: the Artsakh Armenians' right to return to their indigenous homeland in actual physical security and with actual human dignity. And you don't have the right to say it's too hard, that it's impossible, or it won't happen. Who are you? Our nation's history did not start with you and will not end with you, any of us. When the realists say that we will never get Artsakh back, I remind them that Azerbaijan claimed Artsakh for 30 years. It's been just 30 weeks since our forced displacement. When the realists say we'll never get Artsakh back, what they are really saying is that we will not get Artsakh back in their lifetime. And that's selfish. It's not about you. It's not about me. It's about our nation in the course of a continuing history. Who are we to think that we get to close the book and just move on to the next gala, the next vacation? Because I may not live to see the fruits of my labor doesn't mean I shouldn't struggle to achieve the goals so that my children, your children, our children's grandchildren may live as Armenians one day with dignity and strength in our homelands, all of them. We should be privileged to be part of the Armenian nation. We should be privileged to play a role in the life of a great nation. We should be privileged to make our contribution to the struggle of a great people. But let that contribution be bigger than us. Let it be more visionary than just tomorrow. Let it be bolder than you think it can be. Resilience demands more than endurance. It requires an unyielding vision for our nation, a nation that asserts its control over its own national narrative. And I know We will overcome. We will build a stronger, more united national consciousness, empowering a national story that resonates with our truth, guided by our purpose and unwavering in our resolve. And when we start on this path towards that vision, we will finally take hold of our own national destiny. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kerkonyan, for your words this evening. Very powerful, very moving, and a powerful reminder of why we are all here together this evening. Our journey through memory and tribute continues with words from Glendale's poet laureate, Rafi Joe Vartanyan. Please join us on stage.
Thank you. Tonight I'm going to read 4 poems. The first is in Armenian and the other 3 are in English. This first poem is about my father's garden. It's called Bardeze. Հայգ նահաբեդին Bardezեն թուրս, լեզուս թաղեցի հորս Bardezին մեջ, որբեսի ուժ դա փնության, որովհետև հոգիս լրութենեն ալ հուսահադ է, անհույս է որբես սպյուրք, որբես ինքնաօդար, որբես հոգի ու վգա և աքսորի զավագ, բادرազմը և ողբերգությունը գգոչվին այդ երես լզողները ու ծնողքս իրենց հաջույքը գբահեն մեծ մորս քրբանին մեջ։ Յանի սաբրսыз մոնամի այս կյանքը բնական չէ, որովհետև անգծաղգի կմախկի մը գողեն այն քերեզմանադան մեջ ուր գֆրֆրա գիլիգյո Հայաստանի աբա Արցախի հովը, Ամերիկայի, Չինաստանի, Ուրուգվայի հովը, նահատակներուն, զոհերուն, արհեստավորին և արմադին հովը, Պերնետ պրծված լեզուն ընգղմեցավ մելանին մեջ, ուր գրծավ բատմական նյութեր կրել, ձովապին ավազներուն վրա, օրերու ընթացքին, ամիսներով, դարիներով, թարերով, պարերով։ This next poem is called Ani, and thank you. I wrote this poem about the city of Ani the first time I saw it from the Armenian side of the closed border. And then a few years later, I went on the other side of the border and I got to visit this magnificent city. Ani, are you a city? Are you a person? Are you an angel? Were you my love? Were you my home? Were you always baking softly in the sun? When did the fortress start to crumble? When were the churches scorched to earth? When were crescents cut from crosses? Whose eyes absorbed this unthinkable dismantling? Whose voice was swallowed by the Achurian River? For how many centuries has that bird sung? For how many revolutions will these bees swarm? For how many miles will this vast chamber echo the dog bark, the church bell, our wavering voices into the bottomless gorge? Is man so stubborn as to think his questions matter, that countries can survive, that species can endure? As our ruins shudder, as our population declines, as the black smoke rises over the minaret, chilling a headless church in its shadow, do we see ourselves in you, Ani? Do you return to us as we honor you with namesakes and poems? Or have you hidden forever behind the cloak of history and nation, memories and myth, as we helplessly try uncovering the mystery and capturing justice in our dogged pursuit of something lasting, something fair, something ours? We as individuals, as a people, as a humanity bound by the epigenetics of hope and a vision of the future before our very eyes in this fallen city. Thank you. This next poem is a response to witnessing genocide unfold in real time as Azerbaijan's regime perpetrates it against the Armenians of Artsakh and threatens to do so against the Republic of Armenia itself. This is called How to Orchestrate a Genocide. Tweak laws, stratify identity, threaten activists, silence dissent, round up the poets, punish opposition, blame the victims, appropriate their oppression, sing of your righteousness, say it with the right accent so that it sounds acceptable, do it in a suit and tie so that it looks professional. Kill them in the dead of night so that it seems accidental. Give the weeping mother a care package to appear sentimental. Tell us it was a mistake to fan the flames of an inferno. Hate with such ferocity that it could feel like love. This final poem is about witnessing what has happened to Armenian children in Artsakh, to Palestinian children in Gaza. This is called The Imprint of Souls. I cannot witness the toes of slaughtered toddlers without feeling the imprint of their souls kicking the inside of my abdomen. What if it was my son under the rubble? What if it was all of us right now? Don't look up. The privilege of our circumstances spare us from shells that fall like atmospheric rivers, but we're not spared the complicity of our silence. We're not spared from the fact of our tax dollars siphoned off to bomb babies. I will stand with humanity until my soul is buried under the rubble, and even then, I will decompose in a stew of truths emitting fumes of facts that dissonance cannot assure harmony. Terror cannot create tranquility. War cannot cultivate peace. Hate cannot nurture love. Lies cannot awaken truth. Conviction cannot justify genocide. The asymmetric warfare of little brown toes against the bomber's white-gloved finger squeezing the trigger, releasing devastation, landing in the palm of my hand under the pad of my thumb. Is this the privilege of security? I must know the limits of humanity to preserve my sanity. I must learn the affordances of lies I am told in polished capitals, deception glistening off the marble floor mopped by the immigrant. In these hallowed halls, civility is weaponized to cloak cruelty across the globe, across the country, across town, across the street, across the face of someone's child where there once shined a smile. Thank you.
Poetry, of course, has a unique power to evoke strong emotions and to challenge one's perspective. Thank you, Rafi, for capturing the essence of our shared experience and enduring spirit of our resilience. Weaving our stories has become an integral part of our truth. As the mother of two young boys, I'm very excited to introduce the author of Babo, a tale of Armenian rug washing day, and tonight's next speaker. Let us please welcome Astrid Kamalyan.
I'm deeply honored to be here, and I'm but a humble storyteller, so let me tell you my story. It starts in the late 1800s in Artsakh on a foggy morning, the kind that smells with mountain thyme. A young boy runs after his father and asks him to please stay. If the father leaves, the boy will have to take the responsibility of taking care of his bedridden mother and his sisters. The father stops, turns around, and says, "The Ghazanchans are building a church. Now it is our family's turn to help." And so the father leaves, devoted to his mission, and the son stays, taking his part in the same mission. All his life, whenever the boy looked at the church, he would be reminded of this moment, and it was difficult to avoid seeing it. The church was magnificent, shining bright on a high rock. The reason I know so much about this boy is because the boy in this story is my mother's grandfather, Mushekh Ghazanchian, and the church that his father helped build, together with many other Armenian families, is the Ghazanchetsotz Cathedral in Shushi. Thank you. Thank you. Not only is the cathedral an architectural marvel and a symbol of Artsakh, it is also a witness to our history and a symbol of our resilience. In 1920, the cathedral was left hollow, deprived of our prayers, its dome destroyed when Azeri and Turkish forces committed the Shushi massacre of Armenians. 20,000 of us were massacred in a matter of few days, and mind you, no drones back then, only a bloodthirsty army. This happened after keeping us in blockade for months, much like they did in 2023. In 1992, the Armenian army liberates Shushi, and with it, the cathedral is reunited with us. 16 years after the Shushi liberation, me, my 4 siblings, our precious Babo, all dressed in white, are baptized in a cathedral our ancestors helped build. And exactly 16 years after that beautiful, bright day, on September 27, 2020, my 3 brothers have to leave to the front line. In this war, the cathedral gets bombed, part of our homeland occupied again, our hopes as a nation shattered. Today, our millennia-old cultural heritage is not just seized, it is being destroyed. The dictatorial leadership of Azerbaijan hasn't decided how exactly to culturally appropriate the cathedral. Shall they call it Caucasian Albanian, Russian Orthodox, maybe turn it into a mosque? Still, many other monuments, like the Kanach Zham in Shushi, were completely erased. This happened just this February. Since 2020, spring and fall, the most beautiful seasons in Armenia have acquired a menacing tune, favorable conditions for another war, another unjust attack. In 2023, however, I very naively assumed that I have something to look forward to. My debut was slated for publication on September 19, 2023. On that very day, September 19, 2023, there were no celebrations in our house, only prayers. After months of keeping my people in complete blockade, Azeri forces started the last phase of ethnic cleansing of us, the native people of Artsakh. For the first time in millennia, we are separated from our mother, our land being temporarily occupied. Yes, it is temporarily occupied. And I live for the thought of being reunited with her. And the reason for my faith is my childhood. Part of my childhood fell on the war-torn years of the 90s Armenia. As a first grader in 1995, I did my homework under the light of a kerosene lamp. I had to skip months of school simply because there was no electricity to heat the school. Electricity, gas, and water were a luxury. These were the Tsurtumut Tariner, the cold and dark years of Armenia. And yet, looking back at those years, looking back at my childhood, there is one word that describes it best, and it's joy. Such was the power of beauty of our Armenian community. I kept thinking about what was the backbone of our resilience. What gave the strength to our parents to keep going no matter the unthinkable conditions? Because the story of a struggle is also the story of how we persevered through it. And there are two main words that came to me as an answer: unity in resistance and unity in love. My Armenian family and their devotion to us instilled in me an unwavering, unapologetic feeling of joy. This is one aspect of our identity that we see every day, but that I think we need to sing more, especially in children's literature, but really in all media. It is already in our dances, it is already in our khachkars, because think about it, even our crosses are blooming. Tzachkats khach, they are blooming in the joy of resurrection. And I believe that joy is an integral part of who we are as a people. And it is manifested not in a superficial distraction or entertainment or looking away when the times are hard and when the tragedy strikes, but quite the contrary, being in the thick of it and continuing to love and continuing to give, not having anything. And in this way, my experience as a child was similar to what my own kids are experiencing today. However, in many other ways, it was vastly different. And by this, I just don't mean the physical hardships. Unlike our kids today, we, the kids of the 90s, were raised with a certain spirit in the air, and that was the spirit of resistance. Our fight for justice was our light. Our resistance was the backbone of our resilience. My generation, all those of us who had to learn the Armenian alphabet in dimly lit rooms, many of my friends grew up without fathers. And yet, in many ways, our generation was the most privileged generation in the recent Armenian history because we were born into resistance and we were raised with the spirit of victory. We had the immense privilege of being Hաղթանակի եւ անկախության սերունդ, the generation of victory and independence. The spiritual aspect of our reality was far above any physical hardships that we faced. And this is my most important takeaway. Our spirits were resurrected with the victory. But today, I hear Tsurtumut Tariner mentioned more often than Hաղթանակի եւ անկախության սերունդ, as if we remember the immense sacrifice, but not the reason we made it. Today, those who speak the truth are being silenced by Azeri and Armenian government alike, because just look at the number and names of political prisoners in Armenia. In the void that our silence creates, the fake narratives that Karnik so brilliantly presented, these fake narratives are being pushed on us from history revisionism and calling us, the indigenous people of our lands, occupiers, calling ongoing genocidal atrocities a peace process, calling threats negotiations, working not towards true peace, but demanding compliance from us. And this is compliance to genocides. From more than 100 years ago, to last year, to now, right now, as we speak, Tavush villages are being occupied using the same hateful rhetoric. Peace is the most precious value and a rare asset in our region, but peace is never granted and always earned. In our region, it's not a matter of choice whether or not we will face more struggles. In fact, it has never been our choice to have to fight these battles because we already lived peacefully on our lands. We already had what the occupier has never seen, and that is true peace. The occupier has never known our lands without war because they brought the war with them. But we have a different knowledge of our sacred lands, and we have a different kind of relationship with it. And so the choice that we can make is whether or not we will face the struggles with a strong national ideology, a strong backbone, whether we will face those struggles singing our truth. I believe that our generation has no moral right to put the burden of this on the generations to come. We don't even have that choice, in fact. This generation has stories to tell. I am sure, much like my family's story, each and every one sitting here has their family story. We have values to fight for because we simply cannot take on the fake narratives. And because when we know who we are, we can commit to defending it. This is how we are going to be ready to fight on the front line, stand up firmly on our grounds no matter the risks for us, take legal action no matter the time commitment, no matter the chances of winning or losing the case. It is only through singing our truth, much like a dance before a battle, that our people, our cultural heritage, our identity will stay alive, be a breathing, ever-evolving, flourishing life. Thank you, everyone.
Astrid's key message of reminding youth that they are indeed strong and capable despite the atrocities. There is more to the Armenian history. It is all about our resilience and our hope. The skill of dance has been taught from generation to generation. I actually remember dancing on this very stage when I was 7 years old with my Armenian dance ensemble, so it's a pleasure to see that same tradition carried on now. As we carry on through the generations with some of these amazing traditions, mother and daughter duo, honored artists Anna Karapetyan and Ellen Harutyunyan, presenting to you Character Dance Studio.
հնչում է ահա ուժգնապես ձորում վրեժխնդրության ձայնը ահավոր քո դատաստանի, երկնելով իմ դեմ նորից մարտերի գրգիր ու պորտկում, այժմ իսկ զգում եմ արդեն անձիս մեջ տագնապախռով ալեկոծումներ ներհակ ուժերի, և չար ու բարի խորհուրդներն ահա խմված բազմությամբ, սպառազինված զենք ու սուսերով բախվում են իրար, ոսոխների պես, դարձնելով համակ ինձ մահվան գերի, բախվում են իրար, ոսոխների պես, դարձնելով համակ ինձ մահվան գերի։ Ամենազոր Աստված, ծննդյան օրից ժողովուրդն իման մեղապարտ է քո առաջ, միգուցե նախնիկն իմ, որ ազգերի մեջ առաջինն ընդունեցին քո որդուն, մեղանչել էին, և եթե նույնիսկ իրավ է դա, երբ է գալու վախճանը մեր տառապանած, երբ է գալու վախճանը մեր տառապանած, բացասական այս պահին, բնավ անտես չանելով երկնավորիդ, բայց և լիահավատ չապավինելով քեզ, դիմում եմ իմ ազգի, քանզի ժողովուրդն է, հավատն իր, հույսն իր և հենարանն իր յուր մեջ գտել, ով ամենակալ, ով ամենակալ։
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our evening. I am so grateful to have had this opportunity to spend the evening with you in my hometown of the City of Glendale, even though I am away, as we all are, from our homeland. If you enjoyed tonight's program, be sure to participate in other events taking place as part of Week of Remembrance. A special thank you to our sponsors, the performers, Alex Theater, the City of Glendale, and all those who helped make tonight possible. As we conclude this commemorative event, let us carry the torch of remembrance forward, honoring the past while also embracing a much brighter future. Thank you for joining us on this journey of reflection and commemoration of the remembrance of the 109th anniversary of the Armenian Genocide. Have a wonderful evening, and thank you.